The morning I was supposed to bury my sister, a stranger in a black suit sat down across from me at the funeral home and slid a photograph across the table. It was a picture of me, taken 3 days ago in my own apartment through my own window. He said 5 words that rearranged every truth I had ever believed about my life. Your sister isn't really dead. My name is Zara Osei, 28 years old, forensic accountant, the kind of woman who color codes her grief and keeps moving because stopping has never once been an option. I grew up in Atlanta with my younger sister, Amara, raised by a grandmother who smelled like shea butter and certainty, in a house where love was loud and money was quiet, and you did not, ever, let the world see you break. Amara was everything I was not. Softer, brighter, the kind of person who left a room warmer than she found it. She had been working in Seoul for 2 years, a junior researcher at a pharmaceutical company called Haesung Biosciences, sending me voice notes on Sunday mornings and promising she'd be home for Thanksgiving. Instead, I got a phone call from the Korean National Police Agency at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, a consulate official who spoke very carefully, and a coffin that arrived with a seal I was not permitted to break. I did not ask why. I was too hollowed out to ask anything. And then the man in the black suit sat down across from me. Your sister isn't really dead. His Korean was accented with something I couldn't place. His face was the kind of face that gave nothing away, carved and still, like something made to withstand weather. He was perhaps 35, dressed with the quiet precision of someone who had never once been late for anything. A small scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against his skin. He was the most controlled person I had ever seen. And his hands, I noticed when he slid that photograph across the table, were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough. Who are you? I asked. My name is Kwon Jae-won, he said. And I have approximately 4 minutes to explain something to you before the men outside this building figure out where we are. I learned who Kwon Jae-won was in pieces, the way you learn about a storm. First the wind, then the dark, then the full impossible weight of it. He was the head of the Kwon Syndicate. 3rd generation. An organization that operated across 11 countries, invisible to governments that preferred not to see it, structured like a corporation and run like a dynasty. They moved money, information, and occasionally people, the kind of people who needed to disappear from one life and reappear in another. He was, in every technical and moral sense, dangerous. He was also, he explained in the back of a car moving through Atlanta traffic at 11 miles per hour, the reason my sister was still alive. Amara had uncovered something at Haesung Biosciences, a research program buried under 17 layers of corporate misdirection, a bioweapon project, small-scale but catastrophic in potential, funded by a consortium of private interests that included people with names I would recognize from newspapers and would never see charged with anything. She had made one mistake. She'd copied the files to an external drive before she understood how dangerous they were. And then she'd sent them to the one person she trusted completely. Me. I had received a package 3 weeks ago. I had assumed it was the Korean skincare products Amara was always sending. It was sitting unopened on my kitchen counter. The people who want those files, Jae-won said, have already killed 2 other researchers. They staged your sister's death to flush out the drive. They believe that when you receive news of her death, you'll open everything she ever sent you, searching for her. And then they'll take it. And then they'll take you, he corrected quietly. The drive is only useful if they know what's on it. And Amara encrypted it with a key only you can unlock. I stared out the window at the city I had lived in my entire life, which suddenly felt like a stage set. Where is my sister? Safe. Hidden. She'll stay that way only as long as you're protected. And you're offering to protect me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm offering you a choice. But I should tell you first, there is only one arrangement that will keep you both alive long enough to dismantle what they've built. I looked at him. We get married, he said. In 3 days. The wedding was 14 people in a private room of a Seoul hotel. I wore ivory because white felt dishonest. Jae-won wore charcoal gray and stood very straight and spoke his vows with the careful precision of a man signing a contract he intended to honor, even if he hadn't chosen to make it. I told myself this was an op, a survival strategy, A temporary arrangement between two people with a shared enemy and nothing else in common. Then he placed a hand at the small of my back to guide me through the door after the ceremony, and I felt the gesture all the way up my spine, deliberate and gentle, like he was aware of exactly how much space he was allowed to take up. I told myself that meant nothing. His penthouse was in Gangnam, 41 floors up, and it was the most beautiful space I had ever been uncomfortable in. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Silence engineered to feel expensive. Staff who materialized and vanished without seeming to move. He had given me my own wing, my own schedule, a security detail I was introduced to by name. He treated the arrangement with a formality so complete it bordered on courtesy. It made him harder to hate than I needed him to be. We ate dinner together every night at 7, his rule, unexplained. The first night we didn't speak for 40 minutes. The second night, I asked him why he'd agreed to this arrangement, when a man with his resources had 100 other options. He was quiet long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. "Your sister came to me first," he said finally, "before she found the files. She'd heard I was the kind of problem that solved other problems." He looked at his glass. "She showed me a photograph of you. She said, if anything happens to me, make sure Zara doesn't end up alone in this." I felt something crack open in my chest that I could not afford to feel. "She trusted you," I said. "She doesn't trust anyone." "I know," he said. I didn't want to fail that. 3 weeks into our arrangement, I opened the package. The drive contained everything Amara had promised: research files, financial transfers, names. It was devastating and thorough, and would dismantle several very powerful careers when it reached the right hands. I spent 4 days cross-referencing it against what Jae-won's people had separately compiled, working at the desk in my wing while Seoul moved 41 floors below me and Jae-won brought me coffee at midnight without being asked, setting it down without a word, sometimes staying to read across the table in a silence that had slowly, without my permission, become comfortable. It was on the 5th day that I found the second layer of encryption. Amara hadn't just sent me the files. She had hidden something inside the files. A message, text encoded in the metadata, that only her and I would know to look for, a system we had invented as children, a private code for secrets too important to say out loud. I decoded it with shaking hands.
"Zara,
if you're reading this, I need you to know something I couldn't say safely any other way. Kwon Jae-won is not who he told you he is. His real name is Kwon Jae-won. He is the youngest son of the man who funded the original bioweapon program. He didn't leave that world, he inherited it. I don't know if he's trying to protect you or use you. I don't know which one is true. Please be careful. Please. I love you." I sat very still for a long time. Then I got up and went to find my husband. He was in his office when I came in without knocking. He looked up, read my face in approximately 1 second, and set down his pen. I placed the decoded message on the desk between us. He looked at it for a long time. He did not look surprised. That was worse, somehow, than if he had. "Jae-hyun," I said. "Not Jae-won. Both are real," he said quietly. "I changed my name when I separated from my father's organization. 8 years ago. It wasn't a lie, it was a line I drew. Your father funded this project." "Yes." "And you knew that when you agreed to help Amara." "Yes." He stood slowly. "Zara, don't." My voice came out very level, which surprised me because nothing inside me was. "Tell me the truth. All of it."
"Right now."
"Because I have been in this apartment for 3 weeks, and I have been careful, and I have been professional, and I have not." I stopped. Restarted. "Tell me if I'm safe here." He crossed the room and stopped 2 feet from me, which was close enough that I could see the thing in his eyes I kept refusing to name. "You are the safest you have ever been," he said. "I need you to believe that even while you hate me for the rest of it. Give me the rest of it."
He did.
All of it. Until 2 in the morning sitting on the office floor, because at some point we had both stopped standing. His father. The program. The 8 years he had spent building his own organization as a weapon aimed at everything his father had built. The moment Amara had walked into his world and shown him a photograph of her sister, and he had looked at my face and made a decision he couldn't entirely explain even now. When he finished, the room was quiet. The drive, I said carefully. What happens when this reaches the courts? Your father goes to prison, Jae-won said. That's been the plan for 8 years. I looked at him. This man who had been dismantling his own inheritance since before I knew he existed. This man who had inherited a kingdom built on poison and had spent a decade trying to burn it down from the inside. You should have told me, I said. I know. I'm still angry. I know. A pause. Are you going to leave? I thought about my sister hidden somewhere safe, about the drive on my desk, about dinner at 7 every night and coffee at midnight, and a silence that had become, without my consent, the most honest place I'd inhabited in years. Not tonight, I said. We moved the evidence to the ICC through 3 separate channels on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, the consortium's legal teams were already mobilizing. By Wednesday afternoon, Jae-won's father had been detained in Tokyo. By Wednesday evening, my security detail stopped checking in. All 4 of them gone. Simultaneously, Jae-won got the alert the same moment I did, and the way his face changed told me everything about how bad it was. He was on the phone in seconds, moving through the penthouse with a focused efficiency that would have been frightening if it hadn't been aimed entirely at keeping me alive. We have a leak, he said. Someone inside my organization sold our timeline. Who? He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely undone. My second-in-command, Park Soo-jin. She's been with me for 6 years. Why? Because my father offered her something I couldn't. He was already pulling a case from behind a panel I hadn't known existed. We have about 11 minutes before they reach this floor. We ran. The next 6 hours were a controlled unraveling. We moved through Seoul on foot and in vehicles I didn't know Jae-won had, through neighborhoods that blurred past like scenes from someone else's life, guided by a network of contacts who owed Jae-won debts that went back years. He never let go of my hand in the dark. I told myself it was tactical. I held on anyway. At 3 a.m, we reached a building in Mapo-gu that turned out to contain, behind a laundry business and 2 locked doors, a room where my sister was sitting at a folding table eating instant ramen and reading a thriller novel like she was not technically supposed to be dead. She looked up. Her eyes went to me, then to Jae-won, then to our joined hands. She smiled. This small, exhausted, relieved smile that broke me open completely. I told you, she said mostly to him. You did, he said. Told him what? I demanded. Amara looked at me with the specific expression she had used since childhood, when she knew something I didn't. That you'd figure it out. That you'd be angry first, and then you'd see him. She shrugged. I know you, Zara. You hid a warning about him in the files. I hid a test, she corrected gently. If he was who he said he was, you needed to confront him. If he wasn't, she glanced at her hands again. Well, you're here. He's here. Park Soo-jin was arrested before dawn, along with 6 consortium members whose names I recognized from the files. Jae-won's father remained in custody. The evidence reached 3 separate international courts before morning broke over Seoul. It was as far as these things could be over. They asked me, in my debrief with the ICC's liaison team, if I wanted to return to Atlanta. I said I needed time to answer that. Jae-won and I stood on the penthouse terrace 2 nights later, and Seoul was spread below us like a circuit board, blazing and enormous and indifferent. Amara was asleep inside. She had lasted approximately 40 minutes before exhaustion won. I had a glass of wine I wasn't drinking. The arrangement, I said. It's technically served its purpose. Technically, he agreed. You could file for annulment. The circumstances. Zara. I stopped. He was looking at me the way he had in Atlanta, in the back of the car, not with the control but with the thing beneath the control. The thing that had been slowly, against both our better judgments, becoming impossible to not name. I don't want an annulment, he said. Jae-won. I want dinner at 7. I want to bring you coffee at midnight. I want. He exhaled, slowly, like a man who had been controlled for so long that honesty required physical effort. I want to stop pretending that the arrangement was the only reason I was glad you were here. I looked at him for a long time, at the scar through his eyebrow. at the hands that had shaken, just slightly, when he slid that photograph across a table in a funeral home and chose to tell a grieving woman the truth. "I'm still angry about your name," I said. "I know. And the 6 years of your second in command. Also fair. And the fact that you let my sister test you without warning me." She was very persuasive. The corner of his mouth moved. "You know where she gets it." I looked out at the city, then back at him. "Dinner at 7, I said. "We renegotiate everything else as we go." He nodded. And finally, quietly, like it was something he had been saving, he smiled. 6 weeks later, I was back in Atlanta sorting through Amara's old apartment, clearing it out so she could officially reappear in the world with a new story and a new start. In the back of her closet, tucked into the pocket of a coat she hadn't worn in years, I found a photograph. Old. Printed on photo paper, edges soft with age. 2 people at a university. Young. Laughing. I recognized my mother, dead 12 years, a car accident I had memorized like a wound. The man beside her had his arm around her shoulders. He was maybe 22, bright-eyed and unguarded in the way people are before the world gets to them. I turned it over. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, Accra, 1993. Me and Kwon Jae-won's father. Before everything. Before we understood what he would become. "Zara, if you ever find this, some connections were made before you were born. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Find out what he knows about the night I died. It wasn't an accident." The photograph was still in my hand when Jae-won answered my call on the first ring. "I need to ask you something," I said. My voice was very calm. I had learned that from him. Asterisk. A pause. "I know," he said quietly. And somehow, devastatingly, that was the worst part. Asterisk. He already knew.
Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and share. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.